Hey everybody, and welcome back to another Max Velocity weather forecast. And in today's forecast, we'll be breaking down a big pattern change that is coming to the United States today and tomorrow. And this will bring another shot of Arctic air to much of the country. And this is going to also lead to some snowfall across the Midwest, the Ohio Valley, and the Northeast over the next 48 hours. In addition to this, we'll be talking about another huge pattern change that's coming to the United States early next week that'll be bringing much warmer weather to much of the country. I'll be giving you the latest breakdown on everything that you need to know in this forecast, and let's begin with what's happening here across the United States over the next few days, specifically with the temperatures, and then we'll be talking about that snow potential. Notice this right now, we have a huge band of cold air that is back up in the northern plains and the Midwest, and really a lot of that colder air and the Arctic air is currently sitting across Montana, North Dakota, and South Dakota. And what is going to happen here over the next 24 hours is that all of this is going to come crashing down across much of the United States. This is tonight around 9 o'clock Central Time. Notice this, we're going to have all this cold air across parts of the Midwest and the Central Plains, and that's not it. It's going to keep falling down to the South and Southeast, and as we get closer to tomorrow morning, all of that cold air will be down into parts of the Southern Plains. The Southeast United States will be dealing with a lot of this cold air, and the Midwest especially. A lot of areas in the Midwest and the Ohio Valley will be waking up to well below freezing temperatures, sub-zero temperatures, pretty similar to what we've seen over the last few days, but this Arctic blast in particular will not be nearly as intense as the one we just had this past weekend, unless you are along the East Coast and the Southeast, which those areas have yet to really see much of an Arctic blast, even though there was a strong cold front yesterday and as well as the day prior. Once we go into Saturday into Sunday, that cold air will start to sit over across the eastern seaboard, especially across areas in the mid-Atlantic, the Northeast, and back through the Southeast. We'll still have some cold air sitting across the Great Plains, and that'll stay there until we go into really late Sunday into Monday. And once we get closer to that time frame, things get pretty interesting. We're going to be talking about a much warmer week, in addition to a very active weather pattern that'll bring showers and storms, maybe even some severe weather, in addition to more wintry precipitation in the form of sleet, freezing rain, and as well as snow. We'll be talking about this later in this forecast, so make sure you stay tuned. Now, in terms of the temperatures, they're going to drop pretty substantially in some areas in the United States over the next 24 hours. This is what we're looking at this afternoon. High temperatures in the 50s and 60s back down to Oklahoma through Texas, and even into Florida, which Florida barely has been touched anywhere below 70 in like southern Florida, for example. Miami's still 76 this afternoon. It's been warm down there in the last several days and over the last few weeks even. Once we go into tomorrow morning, things are going to drop pretty quickly. That Arctic air will move down to the south. Again, this is not nearly as strong as the Arctic air we just saw, but the actual temperatures will be below zero across much of the Midwest, and even back into Texas. We'll be talking about temperatures dropping into the 20s. What's a bit more concerning is what we're looking at Saturday morning, and that is when temperatures could be as much as 20 to 25 degrees below zero, which is going to cause concern for the potential for hypothermia, and definitely make sure you're taking that seriously. Any bare skin if you're walking outside is definitely a concern with this sort of weather. Make sure you're bundled up both Friday and Saturday morning. And this is temperatures, by the way. This is not wind chills. It'll even be colder with the wind factored in. And again, this is mainly for Iowa, back through Nebraska, South Dakota, and Minnesota, even parts of the Midwest. Once we go into Saturday afternoon, things warm up a little bit, closer to 0 degrees in the Midwest for terms of high temperatures. But by Sunday morning, that cold air will actually move into the Midwest. So areas like northern Illinois, southern Wisconsin, we could have some areas about 10 to 15 degrees below zero. So definitely be mindful of this. Once we go into early next week, things are expected to warm up a lot more. And again, we'll be talking about that later in this forecast. And for comparison, these are the wind chills. And again, this is going into tomorrow morning. Wind chills will be about 25 degrees below zero across much of the Midwest. In terms of wind chills Saturday morning, they will not be that cold, to be honest, in comparison to the temperatures, but there will be a slight breeze, a slight little brisk wind across much of the Midwest, and that'll lead to some areas being around 35 to 40 degrees below zero when it comes to the feels-like temperatures. And even down into Florida, some areas will drop back into the 20s for feel-like temperatures. It'll probably be worse going into Sunday morning, especially along the East Coast. And notice, by the way, again, near Chicago, some areas will be around 20 to 25 degrees below zero going into Sunday morning. So that cold air will be sticking around through the weekend. But you cannot stress this enough. Make sure you're protecting the 4 Ps, which are pipes, plants, pets, and people. Those are all very important things this weekend, as it will continue to stay very cold across much of the country. Now, speaking of protecting things, you will not have to protect your lawn over the next few days in the Midwest, because more snow is coming today. We're going to have actually some light to moderate snowfall coming across parts of the Midwest right around about 4 to 7 o'clock this evening. This will be moving across Iowa, Wisconsin, Illinois. A bit later, if you're in the Midwest, like near Chicago and as well southeast Wisconsin, this will be more of an after sunset sort of threat. Again, most of this will be light snow overall, but be mindful, there will be some lake effect snow in northwest Indiana going into the overnight hours into tomorrow morning. This could cause some serious problems if you're right in here across parts of northwest Indiana. Again, a very small area. One, maybe two counties will be included in this potential, but what we'll have to watch for out of this is a heavy band of snow, and that could lead to several inches of snow. I'll show you the snowfall accumulation here in a second. The Northeast will also be dealing with some of this snowfall. Most of this will be Friday morning. Notice some light snow stretching from New York back into Pennsylvania, even New Jersey and New York City. Gonna see more snowfall. New York City just broke a record over 700 days without 1 inch or greater of snowfall. They just finally recorded that. We might even get another inch of snow out of this event as we go into Friday morning into the afternoon hours. It's a little bit of a question mark, though. You might be right on the cusp there of that freezing line. So will you see purely rain? Will you see snow? Looks to be more likely snow, but again, I'll show you that here in a second in terms of snowfall accumulation. Now, in terms of accumulation across the Midwest, again, not really much coming out of this. Maybe a coating to an inch. You might be lucky with 2 inches near Chicago. This will be more interesting, though, back over in northwest Indiana. We could see as much as 6 to 12 inches of snow out of that lake effect snow across parts of northwest Indiana, maybe even a county or two here in southwest Michigan. So something to watch for sure. And in terms of snowfall accumulation across the Northeast, when this event is really all said and done, we'll be talking for the most part with a widespread 1 to 3 inches of snow. I know New York City says around 3 to 6 inches. I don't think we're gonna have that much snow. I would say about 2 inches of snow is reasonable for New York City at this particular event. And again, that's contingent on there not being that much warm air advection in your area. As long as it stays below freezing, I don't see why we wouldn't see around maybe 1 to 3 inches of snow. That'd be the range, but again, 2 inches of snow would be the most likely scenario to occur. Now, at the beginning of this forecast, I referenced that there will be even a larger weather pattern change coming to the United States next week, and this will be even more impactful because it's actually going to bring much warmer weather to much of the United States, which could lead to some melting snow. In addition to this, we'll also have even some more rainfall, which will lead to a much more active weather pattern. And what we're looking at on the jet stream here over the next few days, again, will be a trough moving across parts of the Midwest and as well as the Northeast. Again, we just talked about that, the Arctic blast and as well as the snow potential. Once we go into Sunday into Monday, we'll get some ridging here to build across parts of the western tier of the United States initially going into Friday. That'll move here to the east, and by around Sunday into Monday, that'll move closer to the East Coast. But what this will also allow for is another trough, and this will allow for moisture to come out of the Gulf of Mexico. So we're going to see some moisture across parts of the southern plains. And with that being said, the subtropical jet stream will be well down here to the south, and it's actually going to lift a lot of warm and moist air up to the north, even through parts of the Midwest. And we could even be talking about record-breaking temperatures as we go into mid to late next week across parts of the Midwest. And I'm not talking about low temperatures, I'm talking about high temperatures, which is definitely kind of crazy to think after a record-breaking cold pattern here in the United States. This is what we're looking at early next week. Again, notice some of that moisture will start to rise up here to the north. The question mark does remain on how far north will this go. Will we get some of this to go into the Midwest and the Michigan area, perhaps like the Great Lakes? That'll be something to watch for as we go into late next week. But again, things are definitely going to change over the next few days. What is a bit more certain, though, is this high pressure system will dominate across the United States, mainly Saturday and Sunday. We'll eventually get a lot of moisture coming out of the Gulf of Mexico going into Monday. What we need to watch for going into Monday night into Tuesday morning will be the chance for wintry precipitation in the Midwest, the Northeast, and maybe even the Ohio Valley. That'll be something to watch for, but again, things easily could change over the next few days. Another question mark is how far north that warm air advection goes. That'll also make a big difference between who sees snow and who sees rain. And another thing to be watching for Sunday night into Monday morning will be freezing rain across parts of Oklahoma, Arkansas, Missouri, and Kansas. This is a bit of a question mark as well, because what we're going to be watching for is warmer air throughout the overnight hours into Monday morning. And as long as that warmer air keeps penetrating across the southern plains and back through the Mississippi Valley, if any ice does accumulate, it would likely melt fairly quickly going into Monday. So stay tuned. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. We'll be keeping you posted with the latest as this event evolves.